Despite their commercial potential, sequels can be tough to pull off artistically because they require filmmakers to deliver an experience that's consistent with what came before, whilst also feeling like something new altogether. Countless sequels have failed because they either strayed too far from what viewers loved the first time around, or just felt like a lazy rehash of the original concept. But where these upcoming sequels are concerned, these ones might have what it takes to be serious improvements on their predecessors. I'm Ewan, this is Whatculture, and here are a bunch of yet-to-be-released movie sequels that could be huge improvements. First up, Mortal Kombat 2. 2021's Mortal Kombat reboot was fine. It certainly delivered a bevy of bloody action as fans of the franchise would have expected, but it left a lot to be desired on the story and character front, which is, arguably, more important. For starters, where the hell was
Johnny Cage?
It's my best impression of the announcement voice. I'm really trying to build my repertoire of voices here. Please let me know in the comments section if I should persist. Either way, the good news is that the impending sequel, titled Mortal Kombat 2, will be rectifying the cagelessness of its predecessor, with the great Karl Urban roped in to play the fan-favorite martial artist / movie star from the video games. The trailers certainly suggest that Urban is having a ton of fun playing Cage, and in addition to this, the sequel will also introduce other iconic combatants such as Katana, Jade, Quan Chi, Shao Kahn, Sindel, and Baraka, which, yeah, that's a great roster. But perhaps the biggest relief to fans of the gaming franchise is that the protagonist of the first film, Cole Young, played by Louis Tan, appears to have been relegated to glorified cameo duty this time around. Given that he was an original creation for the first movie and functioned as a rather pointless audience surrogate character, the fact that his presence is being seriously curtailed should help Mortal Kombat 2 be a vastly superior sequel. Next up, Fast 11, or maybe Fast XI, whatever it's going to be called. The most recent Fast and Furious movie, Fast X, was frankly a lot of old tosh, even for the series' rather loosey-goosey standards post the 7th installment in the franchise. But for Fast X specifically, we reached a whole new nadir with this one. It's never felt more tired and on autopilot than it did here, with a bland script, played out action sequences, and a resoundingly lame cliffhanger ending, which, oh, Vin, what are we doing here? Were it not for Jason Momoa's wildly over-the-top performance as villain Dante Reyes, basically the Fast and Furious Joker, Fast X would have been outright forgettable. But there is some scant promise for the next one, which Vin Diesel has promised will be a more back-to-basics affair, returning to the franchise's street racing roots in Los Angeles, while dialing back the cartoonish, globe-trotting action super spy stupidity. And again, take this with a huge grain of salt, but Fast 11 has also been confirmed to be the final entry in the mainline series, and so it's fair to assume that Diesel and company will be attempting to cook up something meaningful, and potentially it could be an emotional farewell to the fanbase. Though it's reasonable to just be a little concerned about Diesel's claims that the late Paul Walker's Brian O'Connor will make an appearance in the film, presumably through VFX trickery once again. At least the creatives appear to have listened to the vocal criticism of the last movie, which again was bad. On the way, Scary Movie 6. There was genuine surprise when a 6th entry into hit horror spoof franchise Scary Movie was announced last year, considering the spoof genre more or less died a painful death in the 2010s with the rise of social media and such bad movies as Meet the Spartans and is it superhero movie as well? Oh man, those were bad. Moreover, 2013's Scary Movie 5 was an absolute dumpster fire of a film. A charmless, virtually laugh-free slog of a movie which was universally panned by critics, confirming beyond any doubt that the series had finally run its course. And so, while it's absolutely fair to say that the bar is firmly in hell for Scary Movie 6, it's also a prime example of a series that, despite the tawdry quality of its later entries, is still held in fondly nostalgic regard by many cinephiles. Furthermore, the horror genre has changed considerably over the last decade plus, ensuring the sequel shouldn't want for a fresh angle or new material to draw from. And above all else, Scary Movie 6 was recently confirmed to star Anna Faris and Regina Hall, reprising their roles as Cindy and Brenda respectively, after conspicuously sitting out the previous entry, so that's another plus. With these elements in play, it's pretty much mathematically impossible for Scary Movie 6 to not be at least a solid-ish improvement over the last film, even if it's just like a little solid, like a smidge. The consistency is, it's healthy, but, it's acceptable. Next up, we're holding out for a hero, Shrek 5. As iconic as the Shrek franchise remains to this very day, it's also inarguable that the series' quality peaked with its terrific second film, after which the law of diminishing returns swiftly kicked in across the next two sequels. 2010's Shrek Forever After was a fairly mediocre finale, enough that fans vocally rallied for DreamWorks to produce another movie, and in 2027, they'll finally get their wish. It's like a whopping, 26 years since the first Shrek? Brief existential crisis aside, though we don't know much about the plot of Shrek 5, it's probably fair to assume that it'll deal with the legendary ogre entering middle age and dealing with being a parent to teen triplets, one of whom we know will be voiced by Zendaya. This isn't to say that Shrek 5 will be a banger on par with the first two films, but there's also clear scope for a Shrek legacy sequel to add something worthwhile to the franchise, far beyond being just another Shrek sequel as the previous installment was. Next up, we don't want none. Bad movie sequels. Anaconda. Okay, so we're admittedly stretching the definition of the word sequel here, but the new Anaconda movie is certainly tough to quantify. Something of a soft reboot for the horror franchise, this new film is effectively a meta legacy sequel to the original 1997 Jennifer Lopez starring movie, with Jack Black and Paul Rudd playing a pair of goofy pals who head into the Amazon to remake their favorite childhood movie, which was Anaconda. No judgment, I'm just saying, there are better childhood movies to have out there, the Digimon movie. That's a movie everyone can agree is great. Stop getting sidetracked, Ewan. The rub with this one is that once they start shooting, a real giant anaconda shows up and all hell breaks loose. The Tropic Thunder route is certainly a delightfully unhinged angle for a new Anaconda movie, and considering the original film is more of a trashy guilty pleasure than a genuinely good romp in its own right, there's a lot of potential here for this quasi-sequel monstrosity to actually be an improvement. Just going off the crew alone, it's co-written and directed by Tom Gormican, who did a fabulous job on The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent a few years back, so don't be surprised if this new Anaconda movie few people were probably asking for actually breathes fresh life into this dubious franchise. Yep, they're doing another, Insidious 6. The Insidious franchise has admittedly been wildly hit and miss ever since its inception, though there's a strong consensus that 2023's fifth film, Insidious: The Red Door, was among the weaker entries, despite that wonderful cover of Stay With Me by Ghost and star Patrick Wilson, which was just, that's the good stuff. One of the chief complaints was that medium Elise Rainier, played by Lin Shaye, was relegated to a thankless cameo, despite being by far the franchise's most popular character and basically its only real enduring protagonist. But for the recently confirmed upcoming installment, it was confirmed that Lin Shaye will reprise her role as Elise in a leading capacity, which is just, yeah, let's go! Woo! Evidently, the filmmakers saw just how disappointed many fans were with Shaye's minimal presence in The Red Door, and so it appears that she'll be front and center once again, which should make Insidious 6, better. You throw a bit of Elise in there and it's gonna be a better movie. Just put her in everything. Put Elise in everything. That's my pitch to Hollywood. Coming up, the Super Mario Galaxy movie. 2023's The Super Mario Bros. Movie may have been a billion-dollar box office smash, but it was kind of relatively mediocre and forgettable, and it really failed to back up its sprightly visuals with a particularly witty or even halfway interesting script. The only way is up for the sequel, and many heads were turned when Nintendo confirmed that the second film would be called the Super Mario Galaxy Movie, which, if you're familiar with the series, that's like a pretty good green flag right there. Given that the two Super Mario Galaxy games are among the most beloved Mario games ever made, the potential is inherently huge for a vastly superior sequel. More to the point, the spacefaring nature of the Super Mario Galaxy games ensures endless possibilities for spectacular set pieces and eye-popping visuals, enough that it'll probably make the first Mario movie look positively quaint by comparison. Though some fans were a bit surprised that Nintendo opted for a big-scale Galaxy movie so early in their animated franchise, they clearly appreciated the massive potential of going there as soon as possible. Another entry in the Jason Statham has a job canon, The Beekeeper 2. The Beekeeper was one of 2024's most surprisingly successful films, and in addition to being a box office smash, it was also one of the Stath's more entertaining recent action movies, which is, great, I'm always here for a bit more of the Stath. A sequel was swiftly announced, and while action sequels can be a tough nut to crack, we're hearing all the right things with this one so far. For one, The Beekeeper 2 will swap out director David Ayer for the far more inspired choice of Timo Tjahjanto, the brilliant Indonesian filmmaker behind The Night Comes For Us, and who recently lent his kinetic action chops to Nobody 2. Tjahjanto should ensure that The Beekeeper 2's action sequences pop with more personality than the first film. And in addition to most of the principal cast returning, the ensemble has also added Pom Klementif and WWE's Edge, aka Adam Copeland, to the mix. This should all add up to an absolutely wild combo of a film, hopefully ensuring that The Beekeeper 2 builds on the surprisingly fun foundations of its clearly John Wick-inspired predecessor. And with Timo at the helm, there's every possibility that this is a majorly beefed up action extravaganza. Definitely keep your eye on it when it drops next year. Next up, the other Freddy who's made horror his home. Five Nights at Freddy's 2. Blumhouse's adaptation of the hit video game Five Nights at Freddy's was not good, to be kind. No matter that it went down a storm with your mates who think making you watch a 25-minute lore explainer on Springtrap Gooseman's origin is a fun shared activity the whole family could enjoy. It's not. Please stop. The movie itself, in pure cinematic terms, was clunkily written, wildly overlong, and not nearly intense enough to do justice to its premise. But the soon-to-release Five Nights at Freddy's 2 is apparently taking on viewer feedback from the first, with star Matthew Lillard, who we all love, suggesting that the sequel will amp up the action and horror elements that were kind of lacking the first time around. The trailers definitely seem to be indicating that the sequel will be scarier, more intense, and double down on all the twisted lore that all the fans love. Beyond this, the cast will be expanded with the likes of Skeet Ulrich, McKenna Grace, and Wayne Knight joining the fray. That's a really cool ensemble. Armed with a mighty $50 million budget, which is 2.5 times that of the original, it seems that returning director Emma Tammy is going to make the murderous animatronic mayhem a lot more gloriously chaotic this time around. If not, you have my permission to throw me into one of those creepy mechanical suits and turn me into gooey paste. This is legally binding now. Why did I do that? Everyone, prepare to be aged. Focker in lore. The Meet the Parents franchise well and truly seemed like it ran out of juice with 2010's atrocious third film, Little Fockers, as blatant a cynical cash grab sequel as Hollywood has ever made. So few were expecting a fourth film, Focker in Lore, to be announced late last year, with most principal cast members from the initial trilogy actually returning alongside Ariana Grande of all people. Even accepting that Little Fockers was widely panned and won itself a Razzie, Focker in lore should benefit more from the passage of time than most belated comedy sequels. After all, Ben Stiller is now older than Robert De Niro was when he played the overbearing father in the original movie. So there's plenty of potential comedy and drama to be mined from the role reversal, as Stiller is now playing the concerned father. While few are actually expecting a classic from this one, if it can mine humor and pathos from the march of time, then it could very well be a rare third comedy sequel that actually kinda works. Sisu: Road to Revenge. Finnish action thriller Sisu was one of the most unexpected hits of 2022. A tight-to-the-point revenge flick that was a whole ton of grisly, Nazi murder and fun. Sorry, I get carried away when we get to like the fun World War II pulpy movie stuff. Anyway, few were likely expecting a sequel when Sisu was released, but it performed well enough for writer and director Jalmari Helander to quickly get to work on Sisu: Road to Revenge. The follow-up once again revolves around former Finnish Army Commando Atami Korpi, played by Jorma Tamila, who this time finds himself facing off against the Soviet Red Army, led by Igor Dragunov, played by Stephen Lang, the very officer who killed his family. Sisu: Road to Revenge premiered at Fantastic Fest last month to rave reviews, and currently sits at 100% on the tomato meter, with many critics hailing it as a bigger, bloodier sequel that still maintains the original's tight and lean pacing. In addition to Tamila once again receiving heaps of praise for his lead performance, the great Stephen Lang has also been lauded for his menacing turn as the antagonist, so yeah, what's not to like? If it manages to hit at least as well as the first film, we can probably expect Sisu 3 to get the green light soon enough too, which, yeah, I'm definitely down for more of these. Next up, a Rian Johnson comeback, Wake Up Dead Man, a Knives Out mystery. Glass Onion was certainly a worthy-ish follow-up to Rian Johnson's outstanding murder mystery romp Knives Out, even if it didn't quite hit the same highs of some of its storytelling choices and the ultimately less satisfying nature of its actual payoff. But the impending third film in the series, Wake Up Dead Man, looks like it could very well be a marked improvement over Glass Onion, and perhaps even outdo the original. I don't know, don't shoot the messenger, this is just the buzz it's been getting. For one, the cast is absolutely stacked, with Daniel Craig being joined by Josh O'Connor, Glenn Close, Josh Brolin, Mila Kunis, Jeremy Renner, Kerry Washington, Andrew Scott, Kaylee Spady, Daryl McCormick, and Thomas Hayden Church. We're being spoiled here. Johnson also promised that the threequel would be darker and more grounded than Glass Onion, a relief for anyone who felt the second film got a little too zany for its own good, which, yeah, I'd be inclined to agree with. And best of all, it's received rave reviews so far since its premiere at the Toronto International Film Festival, with some prominent critics even dubbing it the best film in the series thus far. That would be quite the accomplishment, so here's hoping it all comes together. Coming next, Return to Silent Hill. Though 2006's first big screen adaptation of survival horror game Silent Hill was actually pretty solid, 2012's sequel Silent Hill Revelation was a thunderous disappointment, suffering from a poor script, slack direction, uneven performances, and a noticeably lower budget than its predecessor. But with the recent rejuvenation of the video game franchise, Hollywood's interest in the IP was also reignited, and so a third film is imminently due for release, called Return to Silent Hill. Now, while it's clear from the footage released so far that this threequel was made for less than the original film's $50 million, it does at least have that film's director, Christoph Gans, back at the helm. Gans has been fighting to get this film made for like so long now, so it's clearly not just a dispassionate paycheck gig. Above all else though, Return to Silent Hill is adapted from Silent Hill 2, by far the most acclaimed entry in the franchise, ensuring that, if nothing else, the film has an extremely sturdy storytelling foundation to actually work from. While few are expecting Return to Silent Hill to be a home run, it does at least have the potential to capture the atmosphere of the source material, something the previous films categorically failed at. Next up, it's Jerry Butts with more dadcore material. Greenland 2 Migration. Few were expecting much from the 2020 Gerard Butler starring disaster flick Greenland, but you know what? Despite its storytelling excesses, it wasn't bad at all. It's just a fun little throwback to the 90s disaster movie era where Aerosmith ruled the airwaves, and yeah, it was just a fun little time. Like, you have the fun little guy, you have a fun little time, and that's basically what the first Greenland actually was. And Greenland 2 Migration sure as hell looks like it's gonna double down on the first film's end-of-the-world mayhem, as the Garrity family exits the Greenland bunker in search of a new home across Europe. The trailer looks positively bonkers, showing Jerry Butts and his fam taking on radioactive storms, meteor strikes, and even a giant tidal wave at one point. Butler appears to be giving another reliably grizzled performance in the lead role, and the production values look seriously beefed up compared to the more modestly staged $35 million original. While solid original director Rick Rodenbois is back behind the camera. From what we've seen so far, there's every possibility that this is a rare disaster movie sequel that one-ups what came before, and could even lay the groundwork for an actual third film, which would be great for the Gerard Butler hive among you. Controversial pick now maybe? Spider-Man Brand New Day. Spider-Man No Way Home was a phenomenal success when it released in 2021, and while the film was generally well received by both critics and fans alike, it's also fair to say that its reputation took a hit once the dew-eyed honeymoon period began to wear off. Yeah, No Way Home is an entertaining exercise in Unite the Spidey's fan service, but on a narrative and visual level, it's an absolute mess. Likely a result of the film's compressed production schedule, and as a result, it doesn't really hold up much on repeat viewings. Oh, and please resist the urge to send me threatening Willem Dafoe-esque voicemails because of this opinion, because I will cry, and it won't be pretty. Although it would actually be also kind of funny. So, potential pumpkin bomb incidents on my own horizon aside, it is a relief to hear that the currently shooting Spider-Man Brand New Day is set to be a more grounded Spider-Man movie, where Tom Holland's Peter Parker deals with street-level crime across
New York City.
And yeah, there's something to be said for going back to the basics, especially after years of overcooked multiversal nonsense in the MCU, which I think we're all pretty tired of. Next up, Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey 3. Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey may have been widely panned by critics for rather cravenly cashing in on Winnie the Pooh entering the public domain, but credit where it's due, last year's slasher sequel was actually a marked improvement. Oh, seriously, it's actually pretty okay. With a larger budget and more considered approach to its own blood-soaked take on Pooh, Blood and Honey 2 landed an honestly impressive 47% on Rotten Tomatoes, far beyond the original's brutal total of 3. A third film is set to start shooting in early 2026, and here's the rub. The screenplay has been written by genre legend Richard Stanley, who is behind films like Hardware and Color Out of Space. A genuine genre name getting involved in the Poohniverse definitely lends it some much needed credibility, and above all else should ensure that this unlikely threequel is by far the most compellingly scripted of the trio. If the filmmakers can combine this with their penchant for grisly B-movie schlock, there's every possibility that Blood and Honey 3 actually one-ups both previous films. On the way, 28 years later, The Bone Temple. 28 Years Later was a movie I adored, but it was also a polarizing sequel that had the tricky task of re-immersing audiences in the world of Danny Boyle's 2002 post-apocalyptic horror classic, and that's a pretty hard task. It wasn't a home run necessarily, but it was a confident, bold, visceral piece of work that seemed to promise greater things on the horizon. Follow-up 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple is just months away from release at the time of recording, and the trailer released so far looks absolutely stunning. While 28 Years Later had to acquaint audiences with a host of new characters, The Bone Temple will benefit from our familiarity with the likes of Spike, played by Alfie Williams, Dr. Kelson, played by an amazing Ray Fiennes, and Jamie, portrayed by Aaron Taylor-Johnson, while also lending greater context to the previous film's, puzzling, shall we say, final sequence. And of course, we also know that the Bone Temple will feature an appearance from the series' original lead, Cillian Murphy, though Boyle has already warned fans that it's more of a cameo intended to tee up a bigger appearance in the next planned sequel. Even so, if the Bone Temple is basically setting the table for a grand finale revolving around Murphy's gym, then it should leave fans decidedly more excited than the previous film's wildly divisive ending. Next up, Avatar: Fire and Ash. Avatar: The Way of Water offered yet more proof that you doubt James Cameron at your own peril, because in addition to the film's astonishing commercial performance, it was also a visually stunning and ultimately emotionally gratifying spectacle that had to be seen on the big screen. It did, however, have its fair share of narrative hiccups. The goofy resurrection of villain Miles Quaritch, played by Stephen Lang, for one, and much of the contrived later plotting revolving around his son Spider, played by Jack Champion. But with Way of Water getting a lot of the awkward onboarding out of the way, there's sure potential for the third film, Avatar: Fire and Ash, to be far sturdier and less clunky on a narrative level. With the threequel's clear focus on a new Na'vi tribe, the Ash People, Fire and Ash should have a distinct flavor to its predecessor. And above all else, the new villain Varang, played by Una Chaplin, looks like an absolute badass. While The Way of Water more or less rehashed the same conflict from the first Avatar, Fire and Ash will seemingly make things more interesting by having disparate Na'vi tribes facing off against one another, which is all kinds of cool. And lastly, we have Fall 2. 2022's Fall was a tightly wound, vertiginous thriller about two women who get stranded at the top of a 2,000-foot TV tower. And though it wore its low budget on its sleeve, it was honestly pretty good considering those obvious constraints. Its surprise success, both theatrically and on streaming, ensured that not one, but two sequels were swiftly announced. Just stop going up there, I mean, the solution's obvious. Jokes aside, it was recently confirmed that Fall 2 will be a standalone sequel focused on another duo of young climbers who end up trapped in an improbably perilous situation. And honestly, this one sounds a lot better. This time around, the climbers encounter a rock slide while doing Thailand's famous plank walk of Mount Kwan, leaving them stranded 3,000 feet in the air on a rickety hunk of wood, which, yeah, that sounds not for me, that, like, the actual real-life thing. Maybe sounds pretty fun, but rickety wood and heights? Oh boy. And also, yeah, apart from just sounding like a far scarier and more visually interesting scenario than the TV tower of the first film, it's also a tad less ridiculous considering how much the original film inherently strained its credibility. It's all down to the execution, of course, but with the more experienced Spearig brothers, who were behind Daybreakers and Predestination, directing in favor of original filmmaker Scott Mann, there's a good chance it's an even more gut-wrenchingly tense outing than the first one.